I would just spend like the last 15 minutes just sleeping.
I do.
You didn't get enough sleep on your morning weekend?
All right.
No, I got like 5 hours.
All right. So we have talked a lot now about your argument. We've talked about the book. We've talked about how the book might fit into your sort of argumentative question. It is time to take a stance on this. Now, your stance can change. I'm going to give you a bunch more supplemental sources next time. This time, I kind of gave you, like, if I gave you the Knight source, that's very one-sided. Samantha Power was like, I want to intervene in every human rights atrocity that's out there if we've got the money to do so, right? The Primo Levi one was a little bit more kind of neutral. The Hiroshima one tried to present both sides, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, right? And the Eichmann one was very one-sided. So I'm going to be next time giving you like a few other shorter supplemental sources to kind of round out the arguments for everyone. But for now, I think you've done enough thinking about this topic that you can come up with a point of view. And again, it's okay if that changes later as you read more, but for right now, you've got a point of view. So we're going to write thesis statements for your argumentative questions. And I'm just going to go through these very quickly again. So for Hiroshima, you guys are trying to decide, is there a way to justify civilian casualties in war? And you have to kind of say, like, how do we justify those things? For Eichmann, it's all about handling atrocities in your country's past. So it's about how you punish war crimes. It's about how you honor the dead and those kind of things. For Levy, it's about the effects of dehumanization, why someone might use dehumanization as a tactic and what its effects might be. And then for Knight, it's about when and why America should or never intervene in global affairs when there's acts of human atrocity going on. Now, all four of those questions are quite broad. For all of those, you're going to have to find a more narrow focus because your papers are not going to be 16 pages long. They're only going to be 3 to 4 pages long. So you're going to have to find, I think that's what I said they were, 4 to 5, we'll see, 3 to 4, I think. So you're going to have to find a narrow focus for that to be possible, right? And the way that you do that is you use that thesis format that we've been talking about, where you have a claim and you have a reason why that claim is true. So up here on the board, I've tried to do that with a thesis statement. I just tackled the Knight thesis statement. I said, America cannot afford to intervene in every human rights atrocity because of limited manpower and funds. So it should only intervene with both monetary and military support from the UN. So basically I said, if America sees that there is atrocity going on in Sudan, they need to go to the UN, they need to propose that all of us get involved in that atrocity, or in this thesis statement, I'm saying America shouldn't intervene. Right? Notice here, it doesn't have to be about World War II necessarily. You're going to be able to use your World War II books to back up your arguments, but all 4 of these arguments are about the present, not the past. So, looking forward to the future, should we justify? Looking forward to the future, how should we kind of deal with atrocities? Let's talk about the Eichmann question. There's multiple ways to think about atrocities in your past, right? And how you honor them. So you could be talking about monuments, you could be talking about punishment, you could be talking about execution, like you can be talking about all sorts of different ideas, right? And you as the writer are the one that's going to need to narrow those ideas down so that you're going to be able to cover it completely in 2 to 3 pages. So here I'm not talking about like American psychology. I'm not talking about morality. I am only talking about money. I've narrowed it down, and I don't necessarily believe this, but I've only narrowed it down to talk about the money stuff, right? And you're going to choose an angle that you find the most interesting. Okay, does anyone have any questions about this so far? Awesome, so you're gonna write your first draft of your thesis now. You're gonna write that on that paper that you got out. I'm going to have each group then tell us what's good about it. And then I'm going to be the one who can give you one constructive piece of criticism for your thesis statement, right? And as everyone else is watching, what you're looking for is like, what can you mimic about these thesis statements? Like, what can you do better in yours that they do well here? And also what do you need to change because of the criticism that I give and what your friends have given to you. Okay, so let's start. This is this group back here. America should intervene in some wars to help our allies. Our allies are willing to help us, so why are we so hesitant? We should go and help fight with our allies as long as it's for the right reason. We shouldn't just stay back and pretend nothing's happening. So what works so well about this thesis statement, guys?
Oh, I like that she brought in how the other people help us.
Okay, good. Good, okay.
I just like how long it is, and it's very, I don't know, it's like wordy to the point where she like sounds like really smart.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I like how she used like different types of vocab.
Like which ones?
Like, well, I didn't think of this. Like, I just like the end. I'll just say that.
Okay, what works about the end?
How she said like pretending.
You're good, Matthew. So you like that she says to
Yeah.
pretend nothing's happening. Like that to me feels very strong too. Like it feels like a condemnation almost of anyone who wouldn't agree with her, you know? All right, let's talk about some vocab here. So this word right here is hesitant. This should be an apostrophe right there. Maybe we should intervene to help our allies. Our allies are willing to help us. And this is something that I think is important. No question marks in your papers. So sometimes I'll say that and students will go through and they'll just erase all their question marks, but they won't change the word. So if it's what I'm saying is don't word it as a question, right? That's a strong point, a really strong point. But when you add the question, it almost makes you like sound a little bit weaker in your opinion, where it's like, well, shouldn't we guys, shouldn't we do this thing? And instead you're the writer, you're saying we should do this thing, right? So if you were to say our allies are willing to help us, so we should go and help fight with our allies, then I think that will make it stronger, just erasing that question mark. Got it? Okay, awesome, let's talk about this one. From a moral standpoint, the atrocities that led countries to win wars are not justified in the face of civilian casualties because the lives of the innocent do not need to be sacrificed for the sake of revenge. Okay, tell me this group, what works so well about this thesis?
I like how you can, it's not like a very clear standpoint, you know which side of the argument that.
Oh, good, what would be the other side that it could be?
So that you can't justify it.
I see, so very strong. Right here, very strong claim. It is very clear which side of the argument this one is on. Okay, good, what else?
I like the part where it says win wars are not justified the face of civilian casualties. I like it like how it's like just we shouldn't go like win wars just for the sake of like civilian casualties.
Good. So it kind of seems like I like that this part clarifies the reasoning behind civilian casualties so that then she can take that down. Okay, good. Braden?
It does a good job of justifying why.
Good. I think the structure of it overall is very clear, where it's claim plus reason, you know? So because the lives of innocent do not to be sacrificed for the sake of revenge. Now, here's my critique that is not necessarily about changing the thesis statement. It's just something that you're going to have to address in the paper, which is that are all wars for the sake of revenge? Or is this just some human casualties?
When I wrote this,
Yeah.
I was thinking in terms of Hiroshima and the fact that the bombing of Pearl Harbor and that the bombing of Hiroshima was kind of revenge for that.
Yeah.
I will probably change that part up and make a more slightly broader reason.
So that it's not just about acts of revenge, but really is in all war. Okay, good. Let's look at this one. Rather than physical harm, the most atrocious effect of dehumanization is the theft of the victim's identity as it takes their individualism, which is central to life. So what works so well about this one, this group?
Her claim is super clear and it sounds really concise.
Good, yeah. She's managed to fit quite a lot into just these few words, right? Now over here, Keegan said like she likes that it sounds long because it sounds more educated, right? I like that it's long because it tackles more stuff. Like you get a lot of complexity to the argument, but over here, the conciseness actually sounds a little more educated because of how much she's able to pack into just certain vocabulary words, right? What else works well about it? Allie?
I was weird. I like how it says the theft of the victim's identity.
Yeah, what works so well about that phrase?
It just shows like what it actually does to them. Like it's taking away who they are, so they're not individuals.
Okay, good. So the claim here is very very clear. Most atrocities, the most atrocious effect is the theft of the victim's identity. So that part is super clear.
I liked just with like certain words how she didn't use like, especially when it like atrocious. Where it wasn't like the worst effect on the humanization. It gives it more of a emphasis to what the dehumanization is doing.
Yeah, good. So atrocious is so much stronger of a word than worst, you know, and it also has this effect of like atrocious. Atrocity is a word that we use when we're talking about like violence specifically. So I think it works well in this context. All right, thing I would change, I already talked to her about this thesis statement. One thing we did change was we moved the counter argument to the beginning, which gave it a nice kind of flow to it. That other people, and this is what I really like about it too, is that she had included this idea of what other people might think, but what she actually thinks, you know? So she kind of sets up the controversy there. The one thing though is that, apostrophe. Such a small change, but yeah. All right. When a race or religious group face an opposition against their human rights, America needs to intervene if they have the money and soldiers to do so. Okay, what does this thesis statement do well? Whose was this? Over here? Okay. What is Kylie? What does her thesis statement do well? Yeah, yeah.
I think it's very clear, and her point is very clear throughout the entire thing. It's very like consistent.
It's very consistent. Yeah, she's never kind of flipping it around, right? It's like, if they face opposition against their human rights, America needs to intervene, right? Very clear. Okay, good. What else?
I like that, like right at the end, I feel like people who disagree would like almost be ready to shout out, and then she almost like brings it up by saying, "But if we don't have the money or enough soldiers, we need to stay back, or else we're just gonna totally get destroyed." And so I feel like that almost just shows people who disagree with it.
Yeah.
It's like almost like they're about to like open their mouth up and like argue about it, and they're like, "Oh wait."
Yeah, it's kind of the same issue that these guys have here, which is that like she brings up the nuances of the argument right in the thesis statement, which is going to give her a lot to talk about in the paper. And it's also going to make these people feel heard right from the very beginning. So it really reaches your audience then. Zoe?
So I feel like there are no like loose ends. It's very clear. There are no plot holes. It's just kind of all one thing.
Yeah. So there isn't anything here that I need to like circle and say, be more specific about this thing. It is very clear. Race and religious group is the focus that she is taking, right? So it's human atrocities based on identity, and that we need to intervene, right? There's one thing though that's missing from this thesis statement. It will kind of mess with the conciseness, so that's something you need to play with. But you've got a very clear claim here. Your position is absolutely clear. But why does America need to intervene? Is this an ethical issue? Is it for America's own safety? Is it for like popularity in a global audience? Like, what is it about this situation that makes it so that America must intervene? Okay, let's tilt this over here. Okay, countries should memorialize and teach about the atrocities that they have committed, even if they no longer believe that it was right, because other generations deserve to know the reasoning behind it and to prevent it from happening again. All right, tell me, Jack, what does this thesis statement do well?
I think it's really good. It's pretty short. Like, it's not super long. Like, I wrote a pretty long one. We kind of had the same thing. Like, I really like how it's kind of like we need to know about it and like accept that it happened, but like, we shouldn't be like saying that we want it to happen again. Like, we need to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Like, teaching about it.
Okay, awesome. So I think that this one, like these two over here, also gets at a little bit of the counter argument here where it says, even if they no longer believe that it was right? So some people might say, we don't need to dwell on the past because we're not Nazis anymore. Like we don't need to like focus on the fact that we were Nazis for a few years. We're so much more than that. So let's, erase it. But here you're saying, even if that is the case, other generations deserve to know the reasoning. So you guys hint at the counter argument again. One thing that I'm going to point out here is try not to use the word it, that, or this in your thesis statement. Sometimes those make your reader do more work than they want to do, so they'll skip over it. So you just want to be really clear about what you're referring to when you use those words. Over here, while America should do more to stop genocide, we cannot afford to do so with every humanitarian rights problem because of international relationships and economics. Who's this one? Okay, what works so well about this thesis, Maggie?
I like how it goes into like, it shows the other perspective at first, it kind of like says what's going on, and then it goes into reasoning, so then it like kind of gets you like, oh, interested almost, and then you're like, oh, here's the reasoning for it, kind of.
Yeah, good. So, there we go. Right here, you've got, so you're saying here is like the kind of the counter or like the setup, the context.
Yeah.
That like genocides exist, they should do more to help, but they can't afford to do so with every humanitarian rights problem. So here's the second part, which is the claim, and then the third part, which is the reason, which is a very clear setup of like ideas there. So let me put that here, claim plus reason, and you can play with the order, but that kind of format works really well. Yeah, Haley.
I'm using like huge words, so like humanitarian rights, international relationships. All right.
Yeah.
That sounds more professional.
Good. International relationships, economics, humanitarian rights. Yeah, those are like the specific terms that the other people in the supplemental sources are using, and it works to use that language for precision. Good.
It has a reason for both like the government with international relationships and civilians for economics.
Oh, that's an awesome point. So we've got civilian concerns and government concerns, so that he is going to tackle the concerns of a larger audience then. I like that a lot. One thing I think is I would say every violation of humanitarian rights. I think the word problems like didn't fit in with the elevated vocabulary of the rest of the thesis statement. That's such a tiny thing. I like this thesis a lot. Okay, based on then our criticisms and our praise of these thesis statements, I want everyone, including the people who wrote theirs up here on the board, to rewrite your thesis statement to make it as perfect as it can be, right on that same piece of paper. No, maybe there might be a kind of awkwardness here. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know. Okay, this is what I want to ask. What do you think is central to life? Okay, so I use that phrase, existential purpose, which just means like what you said, like the desire to keep living, seeing that life is actually worth something. You can use whatever phrase you want, but it might be helpful kind of to say that part first and then say how it does it with them. It takes their will to live or their will. Yeah, sure. We're now going to try to think of the logical order of ideas for your particular thesis statement. I'm going to work with this because I have on space. Okay, while America should do more to stop genocides, we cannot afford to do so with every humanitarian rights problem because of international relationships and economics. Okay, this thesis statement kind of sets me up with a pretty good order already. the first thing that this thesis statement talks about is the kind of counter argument. But before I even get to the fact that some people might not, you know, agree with this or whatever, I need to explain my terms. This is the first like major term that my thesis statement used, which is genocide. I need to, in the very first paragraph, give some context for genocide. So I need to explain what that word means. I need to explain what I'm counting as genocide, because it's actually quite a controversial term. Genocide is like the erasure of an entire people, group, ethnicity, religion, whatever. But different people use the term in different instances. So I want to clarify what I mean about it. I want to clarify what I mean when I say genocide, and I want to make it very clear what instance of genocide looked like. This is going to do a lot to help my counter argument, like help my audience be on board with me. If I just sort of like blow that off and I'm like, yeah, genocide is terrible, but we don't have the money to go fix it. Those people who deeply care about human atrocities around the world are going to say, yeah, it's more than just terrible. It's absolutely horrific, and we can't live as human beings in a world that does this, right? And you want to make sure that those people feel heard. So right at the very beginning, I'm gonna have a paragraph about what genocide is. Then I'm going to go into here that America should stop it when it can. America should do more. And I'm going to, actually no, before I even get there, I'm gonna need to explain what America does. So does America do anything to address genocide? Then I'm going to get into how America needs to stop it. Needs to do more, But then I can get into my actual argument here. So right here, I've got 3 paragraphs that are going to describe kind of the counter argument a little bit, right? It's not that these guys disagree with the thesis statement. This thesis statement is saying, yeah, we should do more, right? But this part is not yet the central argument of this paper. The central argument of the paper is actually next, which is, but America doesn't have endless funds. Endless amounts of money, right? And so we have to pick and choose when we get involved. And because of then, I think I'm going to flip these actually, and when you write yours, I might flip that statement of stats, right? I might flip those because I think it makes more sense to talk about money first when we can get involved in terms of economics, the economic limits to intervention, and then go into the international limits of intervention. And then my conclusion will be about when we can and when we can't get involved. So it kind of wraps up by giving some specifics in the end. So when I write this paper, it's going to have an intro paragraph and then 8 more, so 9, and about a 9-paragraph essay. Now, that has nothing to do with the length of the paper, right? It might end up being a little bit longer than 4 pages. I'm not really sure, but it has everything to do with the small logical steps that you are taking in order to get to a conclusion. So you kind of want to act like you're explaining this to like somebody who is very upset with you. Let's say somebody is like just very, very angry at your idea. For whatever reason, they hate your idea. And so you need to very slowly take them through that idea, right? I think this one's super controversial. Maybe you've got somebody who is like really, really adamant that there needs to be a Robert E. Lee memorial at their college, right? And you have to slowly take them through the argument then about what you would do with that monument and what you'd want to do and to kind of recognize what the country did, right? So you even the ones that like they might not have as strong of opposition, you're pretending there's really strong opposition. And you can't just say, very first paragraph, here you go, here's my whole argument, I'm going to prove it all in 1 paragraph. No, you've got to slowly take them through the idea. And it's almost like after each paragraph, you're saying to that person, right? We're on the same page with this small idea, right? Therefore, and you're kind of taking them then to the next idea so that they'll by the end be totally on board with you and not hate you anymore. I think that's a pretty good metaphor. All right, so I'm gonna give you till the end of class. Let's see, how long do we have? Absolutely no time at all. So we'll come back to this and we'll try to break that down then into its parts.